All right, hi everybody. In this video, we are going to begin a new module working with the tidyverse package, tidyr, which is a really nice package that has some built-in functions for taking data in a data set, which is arranged in a non-tidy fashion and to tidy it up. And just to recall, when we talk about tidy data, there are really three conditions that we're referring to that we've talked about in the past, and that is we are arranging our data so that each column is a different variable in our data set. Each row corresponds to a different observation in our data set, and every data value is contained in its own cell in the data set. So as long as our data is organized along following those three guidelines, then our data is what is called tidy. And we've been working with data, and in the most part, that data has been tidy. And we've been doing analysis and creating visualizations, and it might seem so clear and obvious to us why it makes sense to organize our data in this way that you might think like, why is this module even needed? Isn't all data that we encounter in the wild west of data land, isn't it always going to be tidy? And the reality is most of the time, the data that we're going to encounter is actually not tidy. It's going to be messy and untidy in some way or another. And the reason why, it's not because people are trying to make our lives, difficult. It's just I think the main reason is most of the time when people are collecting data, they're just caught up in the moment of like, what is the task that I'm doing right now? I am recording data. So the data set is really just designed from a point of view of let's let's design our data set in a way that makes data entry most easy because that's what they're doing at the time. And they're not thinking ahead into the data analysis side of things. So it's very short-sighted. We are going to structure our data set so that we can enter our data in the easiest possible way. And then we're going to hand it off to a data analyst and we'll let them deal with tidying up the data. And that's true. That's our job. So oftentimes the data that we get is not in a tidy fashion. People have given us data that was just in a way that was easy for them to enter the data into a spreadsheet, for example. And the other problem is that this concept of tidy data is not so obvious and self-evident to people that don't spend all of their time working with data. So it might seem obvious to us because we have been spending a lot of time working with data, particularly large data sets that are stored in data frames in R, that it makes sense to us why we might want to store our data with a certain structure. For other people, this does not make it's not obvious to them at all. They're used to consuming it at the very end of the data cycle in terms of, interpreting it and making policy recommendations, but they're not getting into the weeds of the data. So why the data might need to be structured in a certain way is not important or relevant or interesting or obvious to them. So this is our job, that we're the data analysts. We get data that might be messy. We need to analyze it. So we're going to need to tidy it up along the way. And the tidyr package is a really nice package in the tidyverse that will help us, that has some nice built-in functions for that. So I will, this is just a little introduction to the module for this week. We're going to talk about tidyr, which is going to help us with some scripts for tidying up data. So I'll stop this little intro video here. And in the next video, we'll get started with tidyr. Thanks, everyone.